Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. Well, folks, you didn't hear it from me, but the Rays will not be going 162-0 this year. With that being said, it is a good evening to you, and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here on this Saturday night at 9:58. This Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. Tonight on deck, we have a Rays 12-7 loss at the hands of the Miami Marlins. They came into today's game already having won the series and looking for the sweep, as will happen so often in these kind of scenarios. The team that had won the previous two ended up having a nice day, especially offensively. It was weird, definitely very strange from a pitching perspective on both sides. Eliza Hernandez for the Marlins dealing with what was believed to be some blister issues on his throwing hand, and he comes out after 2 1/3, and the Marlins are actually able to kind of piece things together with the bullpen, with it being so early in the season. And with the Rays, we knew by design it was going to be a bit strange for them with the so-called tandem start between both newcomers, Rich Hill and Chris Archer. Archer, I guess, a returning player after spending a couple years with the Pirates. But either way, Rich Hill ends up going 4 innings, gives up 4 runs on 5 hits. Certainly did not look like the Rich Hill maybe we were expecting to get, but I think in his first start of the year, you can't expect him to, I guess, be already at the finish line as far as being fully stretched out and all those things. I think his whiff rate the past few seasons was at about 20%. And he was not getting very many swing and misses. A lot of contact, a lot of foul balls, but also 5 hits. He walked a couple of men, got 4 strikeouts in the process. They gave up a pretty long home run on a 66-mile-an-hour curveball to Garrett Cooper in the 3rd inning. And then Chris Archer coming in afterwards, going 2 innings plus. He tried to get through a 3rd, but got himself into a little bit of a mess there, and Cash ended up going to the pen after that. So I think today, being this early in the season, I think the mood around this game would be a lot different in a 60-game season, but thank the baseball gods, I guess thank everyone involved that we are back to a regular full 162-game season. This game was, I guess, playing for the long haul with trying to get Rich Hill and Chris Archer stretched out, because although they both pitched on the same day today. They are going to be pitching in separate slots in the starting rotation. And these are two guys that they're two big pieces in the middle of the rotation. I think we know at this point Glasnow is our ace. Yarbrough is probably our number 2. Michael Wacha, we'll see him on Monday night in his Rays debut, might even be number 3. And then now we're talking about Archer and Hill as your 4 and 5. So honestly, first gut reaction, I guess, after tonight's game, I think we saw our number 4 and number 5 starters, although I think everyone's hoping that we see a little bit better from all of those guys. Anytime you give up 12 runs in a game, that's not a good thing. And I did forget to mention Colin McHugh making his Rays debut, has not pitched since 2019, and things could not have gone much worse for him, giving up 3 runs on 3 hits in his 1 inning of work in what was pretty much already garbage time. Jeffrey Springs making his Rays debut. Everyone except Ryan Thompson was making their Rays debut. I suppose if you include Chris Archer in that, of course, pitching with the Rays for several seasons way back when. And the offense certainly did their part. You score 7 runs for this team with this defense, with this pitching staff. More times than not, you will come out with a win, but kind of the flip-flop of those results there. I think you stole a couple games, especially on opening day when you only score a run and you're able to win. And then yesterday, basically getting a victory from the jaws of defeat there with a 3-run Wendell homer late in the goings last night. So here tonight, they were able to get the offense going against a pitching staff of the Marlins that was not very good, but the newcomers and the pitching staff are not able to do their part. So we hope that maybe their next time their rotation or the second time through, they'll be a little bit more improved. I thought for Hill and Archer, they both left a lot of meat on the bone. Rich Hill is a bit hard to, I think, kind of evaluate because he, at this point, really just has the 2 pitches left with the fastball around 90 miles an hour that he had difficulty controlling at times, and then the curveball, which I thought was better. What I had in mind for the Rich Hill slider was, or the curveball rather, was not what we saw tonight. So I think maybe he could get that dialed in a little bit better, and a lot of contact off of that, which is usually not how that goes. He tends to get a good amount of whiffs on that curveball and was not getting that tonight. And then with Chris Archer, I think had difficulty locating just about all of his pitches. I don't think a lot of his sliders had the break to it he wanted to. With him having the slider and now a changeup as well, it was hard to identify which one was which because none of them, for the most part, really moved. And if it was 87, 88, maybe that was the changeup. But I think he certainly has room for improvement. And so we'll discuss all of that and more here on this Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show. We are going to take a couple-minute break here to allow some callers to roll in. If we do have anyone that would like to come on and air their grievances, this is certainly your opportunity to do so. The number to call is 877-566-1020. That number internationally toll-free. So we're going to take a couple-minute break, and then when we come back, potentially take some phone calls, talk tonight's loss, and then we also will talk about the Boston series starting next week at the very end of the program. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 10:06, we are back on the William Haynes Show, continuing to discuss tonight's 12-7 loss at the hands of the Miami Marlins. Once again, the number to call the show is 877-566-1020. With you for about another 50 minutes or so, if we can stretch this out to an hour, I know. I think during this portion of the season, when it is still during the very early goings and not all the players are even completely stretched out or even ready back into regular season games, I think this is basically proving all the stuff about how spring training really doesn't matter. It's useless as far as trying to take things away from it. It's just guys trying to prepare for the season, but nothing can replicate the action of a real game that counts. And seeing some of that tonight, for example, with Austin Meadows and 3 major miscues in the outfield. One early in the game where instead of letting it fall in front of him, he did dive. And I don't think that decision was necessarily a bad one. He just missed it, bouncing off, I guess, the front part of his glove there and into his face, I believe, as well. And then later during Chris Archer's appearance, basically back-to-back line drive, fly balls, whatever, into right field, and Austin Meadows, just an absolute disaster, kind of just a little league type low light, if you will. I mean, I'm sure most of you guys were watching the game and you saw it, but a guy that I've been trying to prop up as a pretty good defensive player the last couple of seasons, and with him cutting down weight, the expectation is that he would continue along that track, but had a very rough game out there in right field. I thought maybe they'd give him the day off today. It looks like the guys that got the day off were Yoshi for the most part. They had some late subs. Brandon Lau got the day off, as did Randy Arozarena. So I was pretty close as far as my predictions for the lineup today, as Kevin Cash kind of shuffles guys around and wanted to get everyone some action here in the very early part of the season, which makes sense. The Rays have an off day tomorrow, a very rare Sunday off day, the first one, I think, for the Rays since 2012. And then they'll be in Boston to start a 3-game series on Monday, basically through Wednesday. And again, we'll talk about that a little later in the show. But I guess with all those kind of intros out of the way, we'll get right into talking about the game, the scorebook, the box score, everything, all of that good stuff. Basically, for the Rays, it was 7 runs on 9 hits, 1 error for them. And then for the Miami Marlins, 12 runs on 14 hits, 2 errors for them, including one, I know, in the 8th that allowed a run to score. But either way, 14 hits is a lot of hits to give up, but the offense putting up 12 of their own is certainly good to see. I did kind of bury the lead in this regard. The Miami Marlins scoring runs in 7 of the 8 innings in which they came up to bat, most of them adding just a run. That was the case during the first through the 4th inning. They had 4 straight 1-run innings, and then a 2-run inning in the 6th, no runs in the 7th. 2 runs in the 5th, no runs in the 6th, 3 runs in the 7th, and also 3 in the 8th to basically bury Colin McHugh in his Rays debut and first time on the mound since 2019. So that's certainly an issue. And you look at basically each starter as well, if you will, with Hill and Archer. I think that the same takeaway from them, like with Rich Hill, the 4 runs allowed, I would almost feel better if those all just came in one inning where he just kind of could not find the zone or whatever it was. A couple of baseballs got away from him, but instead consistently giving up a run each time he stepped onto the mound. That's not a great sign, but I think as I mentioned earlier, this is not the Rich Hill I think we're going to see. If this does continue along this track, and this is just going to be 41 Rich Hill experience in a Rays uniform, then I think he'll find his way basically pitching 2 or 3 innings at a time in the middle innings out of the bullpen, and he won't be a part of the starting rotation because you have guys like Josh Fleming, like Shane McClanahan, like Brent Honeywell, all of those guys, Luis Patino even. So there is a lot of guys chomping at the bit to make their way up, and don't get me wrong, I'm not calling for that at this time, but if Rich Hill ends up being an abject disaster, it's not a big deal because we have plenty of guys that can start major league quality games, I believe. So hopefully he gets it turned around, not honestly too bad. I mean, 4 innings, 71 pitches thrown. It was thought going into this game that Rich Hill and Chris Archer would probably both be on about a 75 pitch limit. They wanted to get, full innings. Like Cash mentioned, he didn't want Chris Archer coming in the middle of an inning. Really wanted to basically simulate starting a game, so he was able to get that full warm-up time in the bullpen. And now I will say about Chris Archer, I think some of his struggles may be due to the fact that it was a really strange situation. I believe Rich Hill had finished his 3rd inning, and then the offense came to bat basically in the top of the 4th, and Chris Archer began to warm. But then Rich Hill ended up pitching the bottom of the 4th inning, and then that kind of delayed things. So while they did try to simulate basically a traditional start for Archer, it certainly was not the same. Obviously, when you're starting a game, okay, I'm throwing the first pitch at 7:10, no ifs, ands, or buts, and you go through your fixed routine and all those things. But when you're kind of walking around in the bullpen and the bullpen coach is telling you, all right, come on, get ready to go, you're going in, and then he says, all right, hold up, Hill's going to go another inning, and you're just kind of standing around, and then you're trying to get ramped back up, and you come into a game. I'm no expert on those things, certainly, but I think maybe the fact that his pitches were not as sharp as he wanted them to be, the slider not having the break that it usually does more times than not, and the velocity was down as well. Not just the control, but the velocity. So not having either of those things is certainly a concern. I think in spring training, he was consistently throwing around 95, 96, and tonight he was low 90s, even high 80s sometimes, and it was hard to tell which pitch was which because none of them were really breaking. But, I mean, I'm looking at in the 5th inning, his four-seam fastball is 89, 90, 91. So that's definitely not the Chris Archer that we were expecting to see. And certainly the hope is that this was just a one-time thing or maybe a couple-time thing where he eventually gets this thing straightened out. Seeing both Rich Hill and Chris Archer, I'm a little concerned about seeing them against better hitting lineups like, say, the Yankees or the Blue Jays or the Astros. They already didn't pitch good against a young Marlins team, but that's definitely where the opener is going to come in because you want to get those guys every break that you can. For the Yankees series, ESPN projects Yarbrough, Rich Hill, and Walker. I don't know if it's going to go that way. I don't think so. I think the Rays notes that the communications department for them published said that they're basically going to move the rotation up a spot because of those 2 off days. So Glasnow is going to pitch in Boston, and then that would kind of move everything up. Glasnow and Yarbrough will pitch against Boston, so the expectation would be that Rich Hill, Chris Archer, and probably Michael Wacha will be pitching against the Yankees. And if they look like they did today, neither of them are going to have a very fun time against that murderous row Yankees lineup who did pick up their first win of the season today against the Blue Jays, but that was pretty much just the bullpen for Toronto falling apart as I expected would probably end up dooming them. But getting back to the Rays, that I think that really is the story of the game for the most part because that was really the point of today, was to get Rich Hill and Chris Archer stretched out and get them ready to be part of the rotation. So obviously we knew they weren't going to be at 100% yet, and I think just the reality of seeing them not be at 100% was the thing that was so concerning to see. But so I don't keep rambling on too much longer without any kind of structure. We'll go to the typical routine here. Talk about the offense first, go back into pitching in more detail, and then kind of go from there. So the lineup that Kevin Cash turns in earlier this afternoon, it was leading off Austin Meadows, Margot batting second. Wendell moves up to third after that nice home run last night. Yandy Diaz batting cleanup, Kiermaier fifth, Adames sixth, Zunino seventh, Brasso down to 8, which I think is a bit interesting. And then, of course, Rich Hill, the pitcher, batting ninth. And then the way that the defense lined up in the outfield from left to right, it was Margot in left, Kiermaier coming back to play center, Meadows in right again, and then in the infield from third to first. At third base, it was Wendell, shortstop Adames, Mike Brasso at second base, and Yandy Diaz making his season debut at the first base position, spelling Yoshi Satsugo there. Mike Zunino was the starting catcher. Frankie Mejia came in late as a pinch hit opportunity. And then other guys that got at bats as a pinch hitter, Yoshi, Brandon Lau, And that was it there. And then going one by one, basically, Austin Meadows leading off. He goes 1 for 4 with a walk and 3 strikeouts. So no home run today, so he's no longer on that 162 home run pace. But he did work a 7-pitch at-bat in the leadoff spot. This was his first time leading off this season. And you know me, that's definitely something I look for. I think it's important. They did go down 1-2-3 in the first inning, but you know, you could argue it didn't really matter because the starting pitcher came out after injury after 2 1/3. So I guess in a way it did kind of do its job of getting him out of his rhythm, depending on which way you see that. But he did strike out swinging in that first at bat, but again, seeing the 7 pitches to me is really what was more important. And all of his at bats, pretty much. Although he did have 3 strikeouts, I think that is a little bit deceptive. He did work pretty good at bats, did have a good patient eye. At times, we'll see him swing at stuff in the dirt and stuff that he has no business taking a hack at. But tonight, we saw him with a little bit more patient approach, a little bit better with the batting eye. And over the course of a long season, that's going to bear out for you more times than not. And tonight, not necessarily so. But in 4 tries, he gets on base twice with the I believe the single in the third and then the walk in the 5th. So did do his job there. We had a caller a couple nights ago say that Meadows is probably the best candidate for the leadoff spot rather than Yoshi Tsutsugo. I certainly agree with that. I would imagine against the righty Pivetta in Boston on Monday night, they probably will have maybe Yoshi back and lead off and then maybe Meadows second, depending on if Yoshi even plays, which I imagine he will. We've talked about how Cash has been saying he wants to get Yoshi's feet under him and have him have some consistency leading off every day and playing first base. So I think Yoshi will continue to be there, but maybe when things change and Choi comes back from injury and changes that dynamic, maybe that's when we'll see Austin Meadows become a mainstay at the leadoff spot, because I think so far throughout the first 3 games, we're seeing much more of the 2019 version than the 2020 version, although of course, when you're talking about Meadows tonight, you have to talk about the defensive miscues, and certainly there were plenty of those. There was a play in the early goings, I think, the 3rd or 4th inning or so, maybe even as early as the 2nd as I'm looking at the scorebook, but it was a play where it was a line drive into right, and he could have let it bounce in front of him for basically a single, but he decides to get on his horse and go for it. Had some good closing speed and made the feet first dive and just did not get the glove in the right place, and the ball ended up getting away, and that's how you end up having a guy get the 2nd or 3rd and the base runners moving more than they would have otherwise. I don't necessarily knock him for that. I think he should go for that play. This is a team that's built on kind of taking away hits, stealing opportunities in that way from your opponent, so that's what you have to do, but would like to see him make that play more times than not. And then that disastrous, I believe it was 7th inning there for Austin Meadows. That might have been, I think it was the 7th, yeah, because that's when Chris Archer came out. But it was back-to-back doubles where one, he got turned around basically. He had to turn around to go get it as it was going towards the wall. And as a football player myself, I remember doing those drills as a linebacker or a cornerback, whatever. You have to turn your hip to the side of the ball, and he turned the other way, so he basically got turned around and lost his balance. I think fell down as well. And then Kiermaier had to race in from center to pick up the ball. So that's certainly a miscue. Not necessarily a routine play, but one that a guy like him should be able to make. It would be a running, basically over-the-shoulder catch, perhaps, but if he had just opened his hips the right way, I think it would have been fine. But it was kind of a slicing hit off the bat, and it certainly had some English on it, so hard to read that basically off the bat. But something that hopefully he'll be able to improve on, and I know the Rays do all that defensive drills during pregame, and maybe he'll be able to do some of that on tomorrow and Monday at Fenway Park before the game. And then I think the very next batter or 2 later, something along those lines, it was basically the same thing where he got not necessarily turned around, but just kind of lost where he was and was not able to get the ball. So a very bad game defensively for Meadows. So overall, I think it kind of, cancels out. You get on base twice in 5 at-bats. so not half of the time, but 1 for 4 with a walk. The 3 strikeouts, not great, but again, the batting eye and the patience was there, so I would like to see him continue more of that. And I'm sure we'll see him back in the lineup on Monday because of the off day tomorrow. Manuel Margot batting second in left. He was 2 for 4 with a run batted in and a run scored. It was not a home run this time. It was a couple of singles, so that was good to see him do that. I know it's really early, so what does it matter? But he's batting 400 and a 400 OBP, so has been great so far. I'm trying to just look to see the games that he's played in. On opening day, he was 0 for 2 as a pinch hitter, and then in Game 2, he started in center field, batting 7th in the lineup, and went 2 for 4 with a home run and a triple. So 2 extra base hits there. 2 singles here tonight, and one of them was kind of a bloop hit that fell in, kind of a fly ball, but was able to, like I said, fall in time. And then the other one, a single through the gap, basically to, I believe that was the one where they put up 4 runs in that 5th inning. So that was good to see, or maybe it was the other way around. But either way, Margot has really cemented himself as an offensive weapon, a guy that can bat in the top of the order. He also made a nice play defensively where a rare chance, basically it was a drive into deep center field. And even Kiermaier, as we discussed last night, maybe one of the best, if not the best center fielder in baseball, was not able to get to it. But luckily you have what is really a center fielder in Margot playing left and was able to go all the way to center field deep near the wall and make a nice run and catch with Kiermaier right on him. So that was nice as well. I think him along with Wendell, they're both similar players in their value and all those things, versatility defensively, but also very good offensive players as well. Margot is certainly better offensively than Wendell, but they both can definitely have their moments, and they're both averaging about the same. Margot 400, Wendell 375, but let's calm down on that with only 3 games being played. But a really good game for Margot, and we don't necessarily see him bat towards the top of the order a ton. I know he batted, I think, cleanup a couple of times during the playoffs, and he can be a leadoff guy as well, but really anywhere you put him, he's going to put up numbers, and a good game all around for him. Joey Wendell at third base here today, as they were kind of shifting things around. I thought maybe he'd play second, Brasso plays third, but they end up basically doing it the other way around, as Wendell plays third and Brasso plays second. But Joey Wendell today does go 2 for 4 with a run knocked in, 2 runs scored, and only 1 strikeout in the process. He had a double and a single, so anytime you see that, that's good. That's really all I can say. Already 2 extra base hits for Joey Wendell in 3 games. That's a really good thing to see, and was a bit surprised to see him at the 3rd spot in the order. I think that's a little bit high to have him, but if he goes 2 for 4 and you're scoring 2 runs, he's certainly doing his job, and only 1 strikeout as well. And if I didn't mention it, 0 strikeouts for Margot. This lineup as a whole only struck out 6 times, so obviously scoring 7 runs on 12 hits, they were putting the ball in play quite a bit, and you certainly like to see that. They went 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Of course, Kiermaier going 0 for 2 again, and they left only 3 men on base during the game, so not too bad from that perspective, although could have done better with runners in scoring position. But either way, batting cleanup, it was Yandy Diaz, and what a game he had, going 2 for 3 with a run scored and 2 knocked in, no walks, no strikeouts for him. He started things off in his first at-bat with a single in the second, had an unlucky line drive in the third that went right to the third baseman, John Birdie. So, and that was with a couple of men on base as well. So that was a missed opportunity, but to no fault of Yandy Diaz. Was a nice hit ball, and he's started off nice, and then hit a double in the 5th. The single in the second, that was his first basically pulled baseball for a hit in quite some time. I don't think he had any in 2020. I think they were all to the opposite way. So typically it's the other way around. You want to see guys go the opposite way, but that's typically you're a little bit late on the swing. So to see him early on the swing and pulling the baseball and with power, that's more the Yandy Diaz that we're used to seeing, and then hit a double that was shades of 2020 with him being a little bit late, and it was to the opposite way and right down the first base line, and was able to get right past Jesus Aguilar over there at first base and get all the way down near the wall. So an extra base hit there. So basically 3 hard hit baseballs, and out of your cleanup hitter, that's exactly what you want to see. I think if things continue, you've got 2 options, one from the left, one from the right side to hit cleanup, Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau. So I certainly hope that continues along that track, because a cleanup hitter as the leadoff hitter as well, both of those guys so valuable as far as basically the movement of the offense and being able to score runs in situational baseball, all those things. So a good sight there. And then over at first base, defensively was actually quite nice. Also had a G-Man Choi-esque split over there at the bag as well, a low throw from either Wendell or Adames, and that was kind of surprising to see. I don't typically see that from a ton of guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's more common than I think. Yoshi has not done one yet this year, and I'm not sure Choi with the knee surgery if he'll be able to get back to that form, unfortunately, either. But Yandy, a guy that I kind of knocked playing third base, I still think will play more third than first, but holding his own over that first base. I don't think there was really any issues over there. Batting fifth, for whatever reason, maybe this is just a Kevin Castell vote of confidence in a guy that's struggling. And Kevin Kiermaier batting fifth in center field goes 0 for 4. Thankfully does not strike out at all today, which you do like to see. Was putting the ball in play, but did go 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position. And, was consistently coming up in big situations. There was a play in the 5th inning where it was a fly out to center, but it looked like it fell in front of Starling Marte for a base hit. And so the runner at second that moved over to third and Yandy Diaz was able to be doubled off. So that was just kind of a weird spot. That was part of their 4-run inning. So it could have potentially been more. And not only that, but the train would have kept moving towards the bottom of the order. So a rough day for Kiermaier, but I guess maybe a little bit closer to breaking through. He had the fly out to center, as I mentioned, but the other 3 were all ground balls in the infield. One was a little nubber to the pitcher. One was a ground out to first, an unassisted play by the first baseman. And then in the 8th inning, a weak kind of routine grounder over to second base. So that's kind of what we've been seeing from Kiermaier, but is very swing happy, all those things. He's batting 100 right now. So he's obviously going to stay in the lineup at center field. And with him being a lefty bat, he gets the advantage more times than not, as obviously the righty starters are more common to see, and they'll see 2 of those in 3 games in Boston next week. So he'll continue to get chances. I don't know if he'll continue to bat there in the lineup, and defensively I think was fine, was just kind of a lot of routine plays. And as I mentioned earlier, not actually able to get to one of those balls, but luckily Margot was in left. If that was a Rosarena in left, fairly confident that ball would have been in for a double or a triple or whatever the case is. So I guess lucky situation there, having Margot out there. So that'll be interesting to continue to watch as well. Willy Adames batting 6th in the order. He goes 0 for 4. Kevin Kiermaier and Willy Adames, I think we pinpointed this as a narrative to watch. Both players that are incredibly valuable to the team and what they can contribute defensively. But when they are struggling with the bat, boy, are they. And they both go 0 for 4 today. So your 5 and your 6 spot in your lineup in a day where you score 7 runs on 12 hits, they both go 0 for 4. That certainly is hard to overcome, but they did. Had a pop-up, a fly-out, a grounder, and then did reach base via an error on a decent ground ball. So with Willie, it's just one of those things. I really have no idea what the issue for him is right now. Maybe there isn't an issue. Maybe it's just, we're 3 games into the season, and always a reminder for that. But when he can provide more value offensively, he's an MVP type to the team, not like Major League MVP, but one of the best players on this team when he can do that, because he is a tremendous shortstop, one of the best in baseball, I believe, and is able to take away hits and runs and all those things. But you don't like those automatic outs in your lineup, and Adames certainly can be one of those at times. Speaking of usually an automatic out, Mike Zunino with the Zunino bomb today. In the 2nd inning, he goes deep with a 2-run shot. That was awesome to watch. as I said on last night's show, comparing Mejia, a guy that is speedy on the bases and can get on base with the walk and the single and all those things. I said I'd rather have that than a Zunino homer every 5 or 6 days. Well, Zunino did decide to cash in today with the long ball, and boy, did he got a hold of it. That went all the way out into the left field stands, or I guess the bullpens over there. That was one of the only 3 innings that they scored runs in, and that 2-run second. So was able to contribute there. Was securing strikes, I guess, stealing strikes, whatever you want to say from that catcher position. I'm impressed so far through 3 games that Mike Zunino and Mejia have both been able to do that. Very good at framing pitches. He was good defensively. There was a couple of pass balls and maybe a wild pitch. I think the pass ball was actually to Mejia in the 8th, but a couple wild pitches, I believe, as well. But no strikeouts for him. That's certainly good to see. So that's about all I can say about Zunino. In the 8th spot, it was Mike Brasso going 1 for 4 with a strikeout. That was in his first at-bat where he looked really bad. I mean, he was just swinging at everything, and then looked a little better adjusted in the 5th with hitting a leadoff single. So that was good to watch. And then in the 6th, he had a fly out to left that it looked like he got a hold of it, but Marlins Park, or Lone Depot Park it's called now, being one of the deeper parks in Major League Baseball, one of the harder ones to hit home runs in, that I'm sure would have been a homer in a lot of other stadiums, but here was held in, and the left fielder, Lewis Brinson, was able to make a nice jumping grab. So he was certainly close to getting his first home run of the year, and the single, it's fine. I think that's an intriguing option, having him bat at 8th. I don't know if that's where it's going to continue, but I always am interested in that. Instead of just having your easy outs at the bottom of the order, having guys that can actually get on base, because if you could have Brasso on first with Meadows and Margot coming up, that could potentially be dangerous, or more times than not, a Rose Arena instead of Margot. But either way, a nice little season debut for Brasso, and of course Cash had to get him in. You want to pretty much get all your players some time during the opening series, just so they're not, you want to get them adjusted to game action, because you're going to need them later. And so today was the day they did that. They've got a lot of capable infielders that can play all over, and nice to have that versatility. Brasso at second, Wendell over at third. They could invert. Brasso can play first. He can even, I guess, play shortstop. He worked on that during the spring, and that's good to see. And then the pinch hitters, as I mentioned earlier when we were just going down the line, Mejia 0 for 1. That was a pop-up, so just didn't get a hold of it. And then as well, Yoshi Tsugo was 0 for 2, still looking for his first hit of the year. Did have a sac bunt. It was looking like he was bunting to try and get on, but also moved Brasso over in the process, so did end up earning a sacrifice. Had a grounder to first base in the 7th, and then I have here that he had 3 at-bats, but I guess maybe they pinch hit for him, or maybe I'm just looking at or filled out something wrong on my scorecard, but I also have a fly out to center, so I'm not exactly sure, but ESPN said he went 0 for 2, so and then Brandon Lau also went 0 for 1 and a pinch hit opportunity, so I thought maybe they just trying to get him the whole day off, but it was, I guess, within striking distance, but it was just a pretty lazy pop-up fly ball, so he was not able to come up in a big spot like he did last night, getting on base after Yandy Diaz to make way for the 3-run Wendell homer that won the game yesterday, so not able to repeat that. And then as we move over to the pitching staff, Rich Hill, and I already talked about this pretty extensively, so I'll try and maybe be a little quicker going over it. Rich Hill, 4 runs on 5 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 1 home run allowed. He threw 71 pitches, again on that 75-pitch limit, so he was able to finish that 4th inning. 71 pitches thrown, only 52 for strikes. Looked like he was having some trouble locating his pitches. The fastballs, I guess, was trying to get him on the corner, but definitely were not close enough. And then as far as the velocity on the fastball, around 89, 90. And then, of course, that low 70s curveball. He had one at 66 where he just really tried to take something out off of it and do that classic Rich Hill curveball. And then Garrett Cooper, it almost looked like a golf swing going all the way down to go get it, almost out of the dirt and take it out for a home run. So that was the one homer against him. Certainly could have been more, We mentioned earlier, I guess throughout his career or more recently since that's been being tracked, about a 20% whiff rate on that curveball. Marlins hitters were pretty much making contact off of it every time. I know he had 4 strikeouts, but a lot of those were looking. A lot of his strikes that way that weren't foul balls were taking strikes. There was not a lot of swing and miss is my point. And that's concerning because anytime, his first at-bat, I think went like 11 pitches or something crazy like that. He threw 24 pitches in the first inning, then another 20 in his second inning, and then was able to kind of be a little bit more efficient in his third and fourth innings pitched. But those long at-bats where guys are fouling off a ton of pitches and then eventually breaking through with hits, he gave up 5 of those over the 4 innings and of course, the 4 runs. So that's really all I can say about Rich Hill. That may not be too far off of what we see from him down the line as a starter. You put him behind an opener like Cody Reed gets an inning or 2, and then 4 from Hill. Maybe that's his ceiling, but he only threw 71 pitches, so I don't know if 41 years old, they want to stretch him out to 100. If he agreed to come back and play for any team, really, because he was a free agent, you would think that as a starting pitcher, he can throw 100 pitches in a game, so I wonder if maybe they get him out to 80, 85, and then see if he can do 100. But to that point as well, they may not want him to do that because they don't want the lineup seeing him a third time through. He got exactly through the lineup twice through. They said going into the game that they only wanted him to face the lineup 1 time through or maybe 1.5 times. But with all those hits and all those base runners, 7 base runners total through the 4 innings, that was not able to work out that way. So they ended up, I guess, letting him go a little further in that regard as far as seeing all these guys twice. And, guys were successful off of him. It's like everyone was either 0 for 2 or it seemed like they were 2 for 2 against him. There were some guys that saw him really well and then some guys that struggled against him. So looking forward to that. As I said earlier, it looks like right now his next start is going to be at home against the New York Yankees. So I'm nervous about that for him. Not necessarily sure I want to watch him just get taken out yard by Sanchez and Judge and Stanton and that whole host of guys. But because that's exactly who the Yankees love to see. At least it's not in Yankee Stadium because that left-hander in Hill would be an issue for sure. So, and then one more thing on him, he faced 18 batters. What surprised me, he threw first pitch strike to 14 of them. Although to my earlier point, a lot of those were just foul balls and all those things. So it's good to get strikes, sure, but if they're all foul balls and you can't get guys out, that's an issue for sure. So closing the book on him. We look forward to seeing him again, maybe improving a little bit better, but this may just be who he is. And then Chris Archer, certainly room for improvement. There's no doubt about that. Going 2 innings with 3 runs, 3 earned runs. There was a 4th unearned in those 2 innings of work. 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. He threw a total of 52 pitches. 35 were for strikes, which I think that number looks better than it really was in reality. And then as well, 11 batters faced a first pitch strike to 8 of them. Like, that almost doesn't seem right. It just looked like he was having such a problem finding the zone. As I said, his control was off. His velocity was off. It seemed like his fastballs were just... it was interesting on the broadcast, Dave Wills and Andy Freed on WDAE. They were kind of reminiscing about Archer's first tenure with the Rays and saying that was the first time that they started hearing about the non-competitive pitch statistic, basically pitches that are a waste because out of the hand the batter knows not to swing at them, and so it's non-competitive by definition there. And that's something I brought up so much with Blake Snell. I think we may be having another potential situation like that. I certainly hope not, where he just can't get through innings because he can't throw strikes or can't get a hold of whatever it is that he's trying to throw. I'm trying not to take too much stock in a guy's first start of the season. Not even a start, and he came in as a reliever, and I don't want to rehash the whole thing as that I explained earlier, but basically they tried to make it a traditional start, but it really wasn't. I don't think there is anything you can do to replicate that. They tried to get him comfortable pitching behind an opener and all those things in spring training, but also there's nothing you can do to replicate regular season play. So some of that, I think, has to do with his struggles today, but I don't think just starting him outright is going to fix all those issues. Maybe in Tropicana Field. He comes out against the Yankees, and he's throwing 95, 96 out of the gate if he's amped up or whatever the case. And then the slider's having the sharp break, and the changeup is right where he wants it. Then we're talking about a completely different player that can go 5, 6, maybe even 7 innings deeper in the season when he's fully stretched out and can be a weapon. But right now, we're talking about a number 4, number 5 starter that's a liability because at times had trouble throwing strikes and throwing a lot of weak stuff right over the plate. 4 hits and only 2 innings of work and the 3 runs as well. Only 1 walk, which was good, but was really getting dinged up, and for extra base hits as well. So, guys, not only we're getting hits, but hits for power, all of those things. But the story behind that, it was just, I guess pitches that were either a changeup or a slider at, mid 80s, and they would just hang right over the heart of the plate. And guys were either fouling it off like they were doing with Hill, or they were able to put it hard out to right field where Meadows had errors trying to get to it. Only one of them was, and the other one was just called a double straight up. So kind of the same story, more or less, with Hill and with Archer. I think Archer has definitely more room for improvement. I think we're somewhat close to what Rich Hill is going to be, although there will be days where Hill maybe goes 5 or 6 with no runs, but I think we will see this. 4 innings, 4 runs. Maybe get used to that. That's normal in baseball. When you're 5 starters on the mound, the expectation is if you want to win that game, your offense is going to have to perform pretty well. And although they did, but not quite good enough. 7 is less than 12, as you all know. But if you're the Rays, you take 7 innings all day and twice on Sunday, and because not very often are you going to give up 12 runs. And then out of the bullpen, a bit of an unfair situation for Ryan Thompson. He comes on, I believe, with men at first and second and nobody out, and he's only able to get 1 out of his own. He walks the first man he sees in Aguilar, and they were all in the same spot. It was just 1, 2, 3, 4. He was trying to pitch basically down and into the righty Aguilar, and I guess he refused to pitch anywhere out. He didn't want Aguilar to be able to go and reach, as a pitch down and away from him because of men on base. In a tight situation. I believe that was in a tie ball game when he came on. That was in a 6-6 game, and only in the 7th inning. So this game really did get away because of Archer and the bullpen not able to do their thing. I don't know if that would have been a spot for Nick Anderson, but if it was, men in first and second with nobody out, you almost feel like Nick Anderson would have just got out of that, and it would have been 6-6, and then who knows where things go from there. But Thompson, who typically is one of the Rays' better relievers, and certainly it still is, just had trouble after that walk to Aguilar, gave up a single to Garrett Cooper, and that's where all the runs started to come in, basically, and then did get a strikeout of Lewis Brinson, and then after that, Cash just came and gave him the hook. He wanted the lefty on lefty with Jazz Chisholm coming up. So to make his Rays debut, out trotting from the bullpen comes Jeffrey Springs, and Springs, I think, passing the test at least somewhat. Through 10 pitches. All 10 were strikes, by the way, although one of them was for hit. So ends up getting 2 outs. There does strike out Jazz Chisholm looking in really good stuff. A nice sharp breaking slider, and I believe, your typical fastball as well. So it was fun to watch him do his thing. I think was impressive. So slider sinker is what ESPN is saying, and it did appear to be that way. All those pitches had movement. The sinker at about 91, 92, and the slider taking 10 off at about 81, 82. So I think that's a good recipe for good out of the pen reliever. Something I have not discussed yet on the show, Ryan Sheriff, who gave up a run, what was it? It wasn't on an opening day, but it was, I believe, last night's game. Yeah, gave up a run and only his 1 out. He is on the restricted list. Sheriff decided that he needs to step away from the game. The Rays respecting his privacy, and I'll certainly do the same on that. Tompkin had a piece in the Times, I guess in spring training, about how he's changed his kind of mental approach to baseball and meditation and all those things. So I'm not exactly sure everything that's going into that, but The reason I'm bringing that up is I thought going into the season, Sheriff was probably their number one left-handed specialist because Cody Reed, although he's a lefty, is probably going to be used as a multi-inning weapon. So Sheriff is kind of your guy. You're like, all right, we need to get this big lefty out, and we'll just, swallow the rest that we have to deal with. Meaning, 3-batter minimum, and even if it's 2 righties after, but you need that out. Sheriff is your guy. But now with him stepping away, because you can't bring anyone up for the first 10 days, they basically just had to bring up Jeff Odom, the catcher from the taxi squad. And so really your only left-handed specialist now is Jeffrey Springs. So to see him perform well, I think is good. And now out of the pen, the only lefties you have is Cody Reed and Jeffrey Springs. So I think we maybe see them make that move. I honestly don't really know who that would be, a reliever. So maybe Cody Reed is his workload will be a little more, as will Jeffrey Springs. I think now, as I said, he's now the number one left-handed specialist. So he went from a guy that thought he wouldn't even make the opening day roster to now being that guy. I think is kind of interesting to watch his ascension there. And did look pretty good. He gave up a 2 RBI single, but I don't really blame him for that. He faced 3 men, struck out 2 of them in a single. So let's say he came out to start the inning clean. That's not a big deal, but because there was already men on base, that's fine. And he's more of a middle reliever type anyway. This is not a high leverage guy, so I don't hold the runs against him. And obviously in the baseball scorebook, those runs aren't charged against him because he didn't put the men on. So I thought Springs looked fine, and then in the 8th, Colin McHugh just looked really bad. I don't want to bash him because he has not pitched since 2019. Signed with the Red Sox and opted out pretty early going because it looked like with an injury that he had, he wasn't going to be ready to play. And I guess if he knew he was going to be out the whole season, he didn't want to just hang around and travel with the team and all that stuff, I guess, if with all the COVID stuff going around. So he just opted out and did not play at all. So I thought his spring training was fine. And even his pitches I thought looked okay. And he's a guy that is going to be more of a 2 or 3 inning guy, maybe even a swing man if you want to start him outright, as he has started games plenty in his major league career. Gave up a home run on the first pitch of his season, so that's not good. It was a hanging slider to Adam Duvall, who took him out 408 to left. So he was working the slider, which I thought had pretty good movement. Low 90s fastball with that slider. It looks to be that was the only 2 pitches that he used. Also had a cutter at 86, so kind of like a changeup type, if you will. So kind of a 3-pitch guy, fastball, cutter, slider. And that sounds about right for a guy that's going to be pitching where he is. But 3 runs on 3 hits, a walk, a strikeout, and of course a home run allowed. 25 pitches, 12 for strikes. Definitely did have an issue with control, but I think that will just fix itself out over time. 7 batters faced, established the first pitch strike to only 3 of them, so not a good day for him. He came on in a 9-7 game, so the hope was he could keep it a 2-run game, and the Rays empty their bench trying to come back. So instead, he gives up 3 runs, and the game was out of reach at that point, which you don't hold it against him necessarily, but was not good. He also gave up all 3 of his hits allowed were extra base hits, a home run, a triple, and a double. So as was the case with Archer, not only was he hit, but he was hit very hard. So we hope that continues. So talk about an easy narrative to write about if you are the beat writer for the Rays or whatever, that pretty much every pitcher was making the Rays debut. Hill, Archer, Springs, and McHugh. Thompson the only one that's established on this team, and they all pretty much struggled, save for Springs, I think, but Hill, Archer, and McHugh definitely had their difficulties getting through the game. So that's about the only thoughts that I had. A game that was back and forth. My scorebook is hardly legible just because of all the action that went on. A lot of lead changes. It was 2-2 after 2 innings. Then after 4, it was 4-2 Marlins. Then the 4 runs in the 5th that made it 6-4 Rays. Then they give up 2 in the bottom, and it's tied 6-6. And then the Marlins take the lead in the 7th, and then they had another 3 in the 8th. And as I mentioned earlier, the Marlins scored a run in every inning except the 6th that they came to bat. And 1 through 5 innings, it was just 1 inning apiece. And then things started getting out of control from there, a 2-run, 3-run, and 3-run innings. So you don't like to see that, but hey, they did win the series. So anytime a series win, you don't complain about that. And obviously, you're not going to get a sweep every time. You want the sweep, but you're not certainly going to get it. So closing the book basically now on that, and looking ahead to the next game. The Rays are off tomorrow, as we will be. So since we're not on the air then, the next time we'll speak to you is after the game on Monday. So we're going to go ahead and preview that at 7:10 in Boston. This game actually is nationally televised on ESPN, the mothership. But of course, it'll be on Bally Sports Sun as well. It's not a blackout. It's probably going to be pretty chilly, maybe in the 50s or so. And by the way, the Red Sox have lost their first 2 games to the Baltimore Orioles, I believe, as was the case to start last year as well. So a rough start for the Bo Sox, and they have one of their American League East rivals coming into town Monday through Wednesday. But it will be Michael Wacha, it looks like, although I guess it's not officially announced if it was going to be Wacha outright or behind an opener. I guess probably behind or a start outright at this point, since they haven't said anything about it, and I think that's what Wacha would prefer. So it'll be Wacha against Nick Pivetta of the Red Sox, the guy who spent a lot of years with the Phillies and came over in a trade in the midseason last year. So this will be both of these guys' first appearance of the year. Michael Wacha in 2020 with the Mets was 1-4 with a .662 earned run average. Nick Pivetta, somewhat the same, 2-0, although with a .689 ERA, so had his struggles. Pivetta did not face the Rays at all last year, and no relevant appearances against the Rays that I could find. But Michael Wacha, in his first start of the year in 2020, happened to be against the Red Sox, and in that he went 5 innings pitched, 1 run on 5 hits. That was a solo home run, a walk, and 4 strikeouts. And so with him, the home run was to a guy that's not even on the team anymore. I think the only guys that did damage against him was Andrew Benintendi, who's with the Royals now, and then I think Jackie Riley Jr. So kind of irrelevant from there. But the guys that are still on the team, he did dominate. JD Martinez, Rafael Devers, all those guys. So I think the expectation is that he'll be able to come out and perform. I don't know if there's a pitch limit for him, for the 29-year-old right-hander. He could probably go 85, 90 pitches out of the gate. I know they've been careful, somewhat so, with Glasnow pitching 77 on opening day and Yarbrough pitching 65, so maybe the same with Wacha, although all indication out of spring training he was fully stretched out, going 5 innings, I think, his last couple of times, and looked pretty good in his final tune-up as well. So I think the Rays get the edge certainly in that. Nick Pivetta, as I said, really didn't have even a lot of starts last year, but I think came out of the pen with Philly, and then when he came over in the trade did start a little bit, but did have a .689 ERA on the season. His 2 starts with Boston, a 5-inning, 1 run on 4 hit against the Orioles, and a 5-inning, 1 run on 4 hits against the Braves. So take that for what you will. The 28-year-old right-hander, no real experience against the Rays. I would imagine as far as lineups would go, I'm not going to go through in 1 through 9, but it's going to be the mainstay lefties for the most part. I would say they'll have, after the off day, they'll have Randy back in left, Kiermaier in center, Austin Meadows in right, so there's 2 lefties right there. And then in the infield, they'll probably go Wendell at third, Adames at short, Lau at second, probably Yoshi at first, and then I would imagine Wacha might prefer Zunino, so maybe that's how they do it, or even maybe Mejia. The only reason Zunino, just that he's a bit more experienced and knows the pitching staff a little more, and I think also caught Wacha more in spring training, but Mejia has definitely performed well, especially batting to start the year, so that one is kind of a toss-up. But getting their mainstay lefties in against the righty Pivetta, I'm not sure how long he's even going to go, but the Sox have looked pretty bad to start the year. And then as far as out of the bullpen, I don't think there's any restrictions unless they want to be extra careful with Castillo and Fairbanks. But on Monday night, they'll be on 1 day's rest off of a back-to-back, so that's not necessarily like a no-use situation. If it's a save situation, I would expect Castillo. Maybe Fairbanks comes on if it's close, and then everyone else is in play. Kittredge, Cody Reed, who has yet to make his season debut, Chaz Rowe, Jeffrey Springs, and Ryan Thompson are all guys that we could see. Like I said, no real restrictions thanks to the off day, and they can't make a move right now. Ryan Sheriff goes on the restricted list, so you're down a pitcher, but now it's basically just 13 pitchers instead of 14, and as I said, they brought up Jeff Odom, the catcher from the taxi squad, which I don't really get why go with the third catcher. Maybe they just wanted mobility to pinch hit more, but I can't exactly explain the reasoning behind that. And then to close the show, just something I wanted to touch on and bring up. For the Padres last night, Snell made his season debut against the Arizona Diamondbacks in Petco Park. Snell, he goes 4 2/3. No runs allowed. 4 hits, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks. So he does not get to finish the 5th inning. He throws 86 pitches, only 53 of which are for strikes, faced 21 men, and threw a first pitch strike to 8. 8 out of 21 first pitch strikes established. I watched a little bit of the game, and it was just typical Snell. I didn't really want to say it, and I don't want to be a salty Rays fan that turns on Snell or anything. I mean, I'm thankful for what he did for the franchise, brought us our second Cy Young, and performed pretty well in his time in the postseason. I'll always remember him closing out of the pen Game 4 of the ALDS in 19 against the Astros and all those things, but it was a little bit rough watching him down the stretch in 2020, and he'll always be remembered for being pulled early in Game 6, but I predicted that the Padres were just going to let him go, 120 pitches or something like that. Maybe they want to be protective of their asset, at least early. But I just thought that was kind of funny that he's not changed a bit. You want to talk about non-competitive pitches, as we brought up with Archer. Oh, take a look at Snell. Man, it's rough watching that guy pitch. And Padres fans may love him now, but they may come to eventually become a little bit frustrated, only because I think Snell is really holding himself back from reaching his full potential. At this point, I'm willing to say that he's never going to return to that Cy Young form, just because he's not willing to. He can. His pitches are good enough to do it. He's just not willing to throw strikes. He doesn't want guys making contact off of him, so he's just going to spike all these sliders in the dirt, and guys are going to take it. And you know what? More times than not, he's going to be having to pitch only 5 innings because of the pitch count, and that's not an ace. That's not what an ace does. An ace gets you innings and does it efficiently. So that's all I can say about Snell. And then Morton making his season debut with the Braves today against the Philadelphia Phillies. He goes 5 innings, 3 runs on 6 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, 76 pitches, 50 were for strikes, and then was 13 of 22 of establishing the first pitch strike. On the other side for the Phillies, Zach Wheeler, 7 innings of 1-hit ball, no runs, no walks, 10 strikeouts. So Zach Wheeler made him look bad. Morton, not a bad start, but I did watch a little bit of that. I guess Joe Buck Fox has already got him doing games already this year. That's kind of interesting. And FS1 was where that game was today, but Morton I thought looked fine, but I think for the Rays, the amount of money that they have, he's not worth $15 million. That option was a good move not to pick it up. I'm not sure if they offered him anything to come back, like maybe half of that. I'm not even sure $8 million is worth it, because I think this is kind of the guy Morton is now as well. I mean, when he's great, but he can be also average at times. And 5 innings of 3 runs on 6 hits, that's, pay $15 million for that if you're the Rays. So I kind of applaud them for making the tough decision. Certainly not something the fans liked, but I think with everything they got back, obviously not from Morton, but from Snell especially, and the pitcher that they were able, all the pitchers they were able to bring in for the same price as Morton would have cost, that they were able to bring in McHugh, Rich Hill, Chris Archer, Michael Wacha, and maybe even one other guy for the same price combined as they would have had to pay Charlie Morton. So I just wanted to give a pat on the back to the Rays front office, because that move I think is going to look really good come July, August, September, and maybe the Rays are in the postseason, and the Braves will be fine. I'm sure the Padres will be fine, but just that Was it really worth it bringing in these guys? So that's all. So with that being said, we crossed over the hour mark again. All the shows we've done, like right on the 1 hour mark. That's kind of nice. Get you in, get you out. Hopefully we'll have maybe some calls next week. We'll be on the air Monday following the Rays game against the Red Sox, talking all things that game, basically post-game coverage as we always do. Looking forward to that. It will be Michael Wacha going up against Nick Pivetta. Looking forward to seeing Wacha hopefully beating down on the Red Sox in that 3-game set. If we could have them start off 0-6, maybe if they lose tomorrow against the Orioles, that would be really cool. Would love to see a sweep. So the Rays, they win their first series. Hopefully they'll keep it rolling. We'll talk to you Monday.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.
W